Hi, this is David Failer, and welcome to this demonstration of the Quick Start tool for the Dell Precision Appliance for Wyse. To get started, we're going to begin by installing the Setup application. And this will prepare to install, and we'll install all prerequisites for our application. We need the .NET Framework 4.5, as well as the VMware Remote Console application for configuring our VMs at the end. We'll begin by selecting Next, reading the EULA, and accepting the terms, and continue to Next. Then we'll install. This will quickly install those necessary components. And after a handful of seconds, we'll be ready to begin. Finish that out. We'll then open up the Quick Start tool for Dell Precision Appliance for Wyse, and we'll be greeted with a Getting Started page. This Getting Started page will tell you all the items that you need to retrieve before you can configure your system. After we've clicked Next, we're asked for the appliance that we would like to connect to. We're given the choice of using an IPv4 address or an FQDN. So I'll enter in the appliance IP address that I want to reach, use the username and the super secret password. The password used here will typically be your default value that came with the box, or you may have configured the ESX password differently upon installation. After we've made a successful connection, we'll be asked for the data store. Remember, this is a good point to make here. You'll need a data store configured prior to using the Quick Start tool. If there's not a data store, then you won't be able to continue on. So select the data store, and if there's multiple, you'll have a choice of all the available ones. Another thing to note, that if this is not your first time to configure this device, there may be VMs already on there. In that event, there would have been a message that's in this area that would have suggested that you need to type in delete VM and then press the delete button that would appear right about here in the screen. I'll continue by clicking Next. On this page, we've identified which graphics cards are actually installed on your appliance. The current choices right now are M60 and the K2 for the original version of our appliance. Each of the virtual GPUs are listed here. There will be two. In this scenario, there were 2 cards inserted into my appliance, and each card has 2 of these graphics processors inside them. So that gives us a total of 4. On this page, I also need to browse for the VIB file or the installation driver. So I have already downloaded that. You can get this from NVIDIA, and you'll be able to get the VIB as well as the necessary drivers that you'll want to install on your guest operating systems. So I'm going to select Open, and the path for that will be listed here, and I'll continue to Next. On this page, I'm given the option of configuring items such as my vSphere license, primary NTP server, and secondary NTP server. All 3 are optional. However, we recommend inserting this information if you have them. Note that you'll have 60 days to install the license on vSphere if you do not enter it here. And for the primary NTP server, these are also IPv4s or FQDN addresses. We could try ntp.org, or we could use an internal value such as an internal NTP server. I'm not going to enter those values as they are a simple pass-through to the APIs given to VMware, or by VMware. I select Next, and on this page I'm given the option to create virtual machines. There are 3 modes that are listed here. One of them actually is to skip. By default, we have the skip virtual machine creation, or you have these 2 choices above, which are create individual virtual machines, and this would be a mode where you want all systems to be similar. So up to 32 VMs can be created, and in this scenario, only the profiles listed below would actually be available. If you want to use a profile that is like the 8 gig graphics profile, we could select less VMs because less VMs would be supported, and then we're given the option to choose the 8Q, which is a NVIDIA profile that would be a high or a heavy graphics user. Also, we're then given the option for which operating systems are supported. This is necessary in order to create the VM shell or husk. In this scenario, I will choose Red Hat Enterprise Linux 64-bit. Also, I'd like to note on the default machine name format, this information will not change as you select it for all of, I'm going to show all of the items below. All the virtual machines will not change just by typing it in here unless we were to make a change into the number of VMs, at which point I'm going to change it to 8, select a new profile, and then you will see that now my virtual machines have the new name of test inside there. This is only applied at the time of selecting the number of VMs. However, these fields, the default CPU count, I'm able to choose to override the number of vCPUs, the virtual memory, and the disk space. As you can see here, an algorithm has already been applied to divvy up or attempt to use the maximum amount of resources and utilize these profiles using all memory split evenly. So I'm going to actually override this in this scenario to give 2 vCPUs, 8 gigs of memory, and 120 gigs of disk space. This may be a scenario where you would have wanted to configure them all uniformly with known specifications. However, if you remove these values, they'll return to the default algorithm that evenly divides all resources. Now in this scenario, we can continue to next, and then we would be at the review page and be allowed to select next and actually submit this request to configure the device. But right now I'm going to go back and I want to show a different path. This is to create master image virtual machines. This allows for mixed graphics profiles, and right here we're given the option to make up to 4 master images, and the reason this number is chosen is how many graphics processors there are available, because each graphics processor only supports a single profile at this time with NVIDIA. So for the purposes of this demonstration, I'm going to select 4, and I will select the 0B or workstation profile, and you'll notice that all of the operating systems were set to Red Hat Enterprise Linux, except for after I changed to this profile. It is an unsupported configuration, so only the available operating systems are now available to me. I will continue by selecting different profiles on each, and I'm going to point out that the number of profiles here, 4, is going to be the basis for dividing out the resources. So since there are 4 graphics processing units and they've chosen 4 different profiles, we will split each of these evenly. So in a 4Q profile, you would actually be able to support twice as many as the 8Q. So this is the number of vCPUs right here is actually, there are 32 in my scenario. So this is evenly divisible by 4. And on the 4Q profile, this would allow for actually making 2 VMs that are on that profile. Slightly confusing here, so I'll try to just state that what you would want to do in this point is to create the 4 or however many profiles you intend to use and make the settings as you intend, the vCPU memory and disk space. So we're going to continue on now that everything's set here. And again, we have a review, and all these are going to be the configuration settings that we choose. I'll bump this up just 1 so it's an even number there. 56. Alright. I'm going to select next, and the configuration will begin immediately. You'll notice from the host configuration that it skips because we did not provide that information. But we've now shared the host PCI and set that, configured that as a shared PCI device inside of the ESX server. So this right here is going to be a reboot of the actual appliance, and I'm going to pause the video in order to save time. So the reboot process has completed, and you'll see here virtual machines have all been completed as well. You'll have the 4 virtual machines that we created, 1, 2, 3, and 4, and also a note listed here. Because we had one of the configurations with 56 gigs of memory, we wanted to alert you that a special configuration setting is required, and you can look at the VMware vSphere release notes here in order to find out a little bit more about that large system memory setting. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to click on each of the virtual machines that we created, remembering that we have only created the shell and told the configuration of this VM. We do not have an operating system on any of these systems at this time, but this will be the way that we're going to actually configure that. So from VMRC, we can select the removable devices, set an ISO drive, and then power this device on here. And since I don't have an ISO drive or OS already installed on this actual VM, then when I turn this on, it'll go to the boot manager. If we did everything right, of course. So this will take just a moment. I'm going to close some of these others. I just wanted to show that each of the individual virtual machines is connected here. So this is virtual machine test 4. Here's 3. And here's 1. So it's quite easy to identify which resources are which. So this one can be disconnected as well. Close that guy out. And he's busy. And here's the boot manager as promised. Okay. So we have to return back to our application to finish out our demo. So we've seen all of these resources, and I will finish the Quick Start tool. But now I'd like to show you one other feature from the vSphere ESX 6.0 Update 2. Now we're able to actually visit a web console, VMware host client, and I will log in with my username and password. And I will review the virtual machines that we've created, and we can see all the tasks were completed down here and the steps that we're powering them on, reconfiguring, and creating. And also we'll notice here in our use space that each of these 4 are unique. I'll just review the 004. I'll cancel that out real quick. We will remember we wrote 56 gigs of memory on this particular one, and I'll just check that had 8 CPUs. I'll check one more, the 003, and you'll see it was configured with 4 and 28 gigs. We can actually review other settings based on the graphics profiles, but all of the information required in order to use the Quick Start tool, all those settings have been applied, and you're now ready to configure your OS on these VMs and continue. Also note that you can add this to vCenter and manage it through that. So thank you for your time today, and have a great day.